Good morning, students. Hope you be fine at your respective places. In continuation to this transporting plants, today we are going to discuss how this water is absorbed. Let us take a simple example like this. This is the soil layer, and this is the underground part of this plant, and this is the aerial part of the plant. And here we will see these are the leaves, branches, etc. Now, soil, these are the water particles, water molecules inside this soil, and these water molecules, they are going to be first absorbed by this root through root hairs, and then this water is then taken to the upwards. This water is then taken to the aerial parts of the plant. That is, the upward movement of this water then takes place. So in this whole process, we got two processes. First is the absorption of water. Second is the how this water, when it reaches inside the cell, that is towards the xylem which is present in the roots, then how this water is then taken upwards to the aerial parts of the plant. That is called as the ascent of sap. So in this whole process, how this water transport, how it is absorbed by these root hairs, how then this water is taken from the xylem to the aerial parts of the plant, that is called as the ascent of sap. So we have got two main processes in this. Let us first discuss absorption of water. In order to understand how this absorption of water takes place, so our topic becomes absorption of water. To understand this absorption of water, I will draw a diagram in order to make the things somewhat clear. Now, this is the root here, this is the epidermis. Then inside the root here, I have got this cortical tissue. Cortical tissue, these are loosely arranged cells having the what we call as intercellular spaces between them. They are almost isodiametric. They are almost isodiametric. They have got a what we call as this intercellular spaces between them. Then there is the one more layer which is called as this endodermis. This is the endodermis. चलो फर्स्ट अब इसको कंप्लीट कर लेंगे. Now this endodermis, what we will see, it has got some barriers inside. That is this, it has got the layer of this suberin, and this suberin is not it does not allow the water to move, but there are some cells where we will see no suberin is found. This is impervious to the water. Then after this we have got the Casparian strips, and this what we call as the pericycles. Sorry, one or two layers of this pericycle. Then after this, what we have got? We have got the phloem cells. If this is the dicot, then what we will see, we have got this cambium strip. We have got this cambium strip. We have got this cambium strip. Then inside this, what we have got this xylem cells. So this is the diagram in order to make the things somewhat clear. This region is called as the cortex. This layer, it is the endodermis. This is the Casparian strip. This one, this is the Casparian strip, which is mainly made up of suberin. Then these are these greenish longest cells. This one, this is the endodermis, which are barrel shaped cells. Then inside this we have got one more layer, this greenish layer. What is this greenish layer? It is the pericycle. Then what is this? This is a phloem. If it is the dicot root, then it is this what we call as the cambium strip, and this innermost, it is this layer, it is the xylem. So the water, this is the soil. This is the soil. Now the water has to be absorbed from the soil through roots and in order to reach up to this portion. Now the movement of the water जो यहाँ पर है, it is of two types. Movement of water, it is of two types. Movement of water, it is of two types. First one is called as apoplast, and second one is called as symplast. What happens in the apoplast? Here we will see जो water molecules हैं, they do not cross the barriers of this cell. They do not pass through the what we call as this. They do not cross the barriers of the cell. They do not cross through the what we call membranes of the cell. Here we will see they pass through the spaces, interspaces, or along the cell walls. वाटर जो है इसकी मूवमेंट, it passes through the cell walls, cell intercellular space, or along the cell wall. Here we will see again one more, maximum movement of water takes place. Now in case of symplast, what we will see, जो water जो है, it has to pass through the cells. It has to pass through the cells. Water has to pass through the cells. Water has to pass through the cells. It has to pass through the plasmodesmata rather. Plasmodesmata. So let us take one by one. What happened? First, let us take the apoplast. This is the blue line. This blue line, that means that this moment I will show by this pen. Now this moment I will show by this what is called as the green, in order to make the thing somewhat clear. It is the apoplast. Now this is the water from the soil, and this water, it enters this here we will see जो water है it moves from the soil into the root here through the process of osmosis. This enters this. Now this water it enters the soil through into the root here through the process of osmosis and into this epidermal layer. Then it has to come to this layer, and it does not enter into the soil, but it passes through these intercellular, that is the cell walls, then into this intercellular spaces, then this cell intercellular cell wall, then into the intercellular spaces, then again into the intercellular spaces, then through this cell wall, ultimately it enters into this intercellular spaces, and then in through these cell walls into the intercellular space until it reaches into this cell, where we will see no this suberin layer is attached. This cell is called as passage cell. So here we will see the cell जो हम देखते हैं कि when it moves from the soil into this what we call as this root here, it first gets absorbed to the surface, then it moves into the soil, into the root here through the process of osmosis. But when it comes out of this epidermal layer, it enters into this cortical cells or into this cortex. It does not enter into the soil, but it passes through the walls, cell walls, into the intercellular space until it reaches to this place, that is the passage cell. Now, then we have got one more. वो पहले हम वहां तक देखें क्या हो जाता है. Then we have got that we will show by this red pen, that is called as symplast. Now what happens? Water it enters through this soil into this root here through the process of osmosis, reaches this epidermis, then it enters the epidermis through this what we call as this epidermis, it reaches into this cell, then from this cell into this cell, then this cell, then this cell until it reaches into the passage cell. So simplest में हम क्या देखते हैं कि जो water molecules है they have to cross the membranes of the cell until they reach to the passage cell. Because अगर हम इस वाले part में जाएंगे जहाँ पर हम ये देखते हैं कि these what we suberin layer, Caspian strip is there. This suberin it is impervious to the water. It does not allow the water molecules to pass through it. But there are some gaps where this deposition is not found. That is called as this what we call as the passage cell. Here again, what happens? Now from this cell, passage cell, here the water has become the part of the cell content. Now it passes into this it passes through this cell wall, then into the what we call as through the phloem walls, then through this what we call as this what we call as this one, that is called as this phloem, and then from this endodermis it is this cambium ring, then into the cortex. Ultimately the water reaches the cortex. Now in case of this symplast, the water it passes through after reaching into this passage cell, it enters into the Caspian strips, then through this phloem, then through this what we call as a cambium, and it reaches to this what we call as this xylem cell, and from the xylem cell this water is then taken to the aerial parts of the plant, which is called as the ascent of the cell. Now apoplast में क्या देखते हैं, maximum movement of water takes place, while as in symplast it is the time consuming. This symplast it is the time consuming, and here what we will see, less amount of water जो है movement of water it takes place. Here again what we will see in apoplasts, the water जो है it moves from the hypotonic solution to the hypertonic solution when it enters into the root here. from hypotonic solution, from hypotonic solution to hypertonic solution. क्योंकि यहाँ पर हमने there are some salt concentration is found there. अगर विद इन द सेल हम देखें उसकी कंसंट्रेशन कम होगी. अब सोल्यूशन हम देखें कि साल्ट ज्यादा होंगे, आयन ज्यादा होंगे, साल्ट ज्यादा होंगे, सो ये हाइपोटोनिक सोल्यूशन बन जाता है, ये हाइपरटोनिक. सो वाटर विल मूव फ्रॉम हाइपोटोनिक सोल्यूशन टू हाइपरटोनिक सोल्यूशन. बट इन द एपोप्लास्ट इट हैज नॉट टू पास थ्रू द सेल, बट इट passes through the cell walls or between gaps between the cell walls, and it passes through these intercellular spaces. जब ये यहाँ पर पहुंच जाता है स्पेसिफिक सेल में, here it again becomes the part of the cell contents. अब यहाँ पर हम क्या देखते हैं, जो कंसंट्रेशन ज्यादा होते हैं क्योंकि they are already present these salts inside these, फिर वो बाहर चला जाता है and it passes, it barriers, it does not enter into the cell but it passes through these cell walls, it passes through these what we call as the gaps. Ultimately it reaches to the xylem. Now what happens in the simplest? Here again हाइपोटोनिक टू द हाइपरटोनिक सोल्यूशन. देन अब हम देखते हैं कि जो प्योर वाटर जो होता है उसकी जो ऑस्मोटिक जो होता है दैट इज जीरो. हाइपोटोनिक सोल्यूशन के इट इज व्हाट विल सी इट हैज गॉट जीरो. दिस नाउ from 0 we have to move up to this. So this cell it has got less, that it has got -1, and this cell it has got settled less, that is -2, it has got -3, and so on so on. Then what does these cells do? They absorb the ions. They absorb the ions from this surrounding cell. उससे क्या हो जाती है, इसकी कंसंट्रेशन थोड़ी बहुत और कम हो जाती है as compared to that of this cell. यहाँ पर हम क्या देखते हैं, जो वाटर की कंसंट्रेशन वो थोड़ी बहुत ज्यादा हो जाती है, बट now the water had to pass through this cell to this cell. What these cortical cells do or these other cells do, they absorb the ions from the surrounding surface, from the surrounding cell in order to lower down their concentration. क्योंकि ये ऑलमोस्ट इसमें भी कुछ साल्ट्स होते हैं, दे हैव गॉट सम, इट हैज गॉट सम सॉल्यूट डिसॉल्व्ड इन इट, सॉल्यूट डिसॉल्व्ड इन. अब इसकी कंसंट्रेशन थोड़ी बहुत नेगेटिव में हो गई. नाउ दिस वाटर इट हैज टू, जो इस सेल में पाया जाता है इसकी कंसंट्रेशन उससे भी कम होनी चाहिए. व्हाट डिड दे डू? दे एब्जॉर्ब द आयंस फ्रॉम द सराउंडिंग सेल्स इन ऑर्डर कि इसकी कंसंट्रेशन और इसकी कंसंट्रेशन में फर्क होनी चाहिए. इट मस्ट बी एट द हायर कंसंट्रेशन, इट मे बी एट द लोअर कंसंट्रेशन, सो दैट वाटर जो है इट विल मूव फ्रॉम दिस सेल टू दिस सेल. नाउ दिस सेल इट हैज नाउ सेल नंबर 2. If we call this cell number 1, it's cell number 2. This cell number 2, it has to absorb more ions from the surrounding cells in order जो इसकी concentration होनी चाहिए, it will recede further and it will be at hypotone, it will be the hypertone until it reaches to this xylem. From the xylem, if this water is taken up to the aerial parts of the plant, that is called as the ascent of the sap, and that ascent of the sap जो है that will be discussed in the second video. So here we will see absorption of water. We have mainly got two movements. First one is the apoplast and second one is the symplast. Apoplast में हम क्या देते हैं, जो water जो होता है it moves through the intercellular spaces, it moves along the cell wall, and maximum movement of water it takes place by means of this apoplast. In symplast, water has passed through the cell, it has to cross this plasmodesmata. So here we will see less amount of water, the movement of water it takes place. And this was all about this absorption of water. In the next video we will try to discuss the ascent of the sap. Until then, goodbye, God bless you, thanks.